Well, we are honored today to have a person with us that National Geographic actually described as one of the top 9 photographers you should know. We have Angela Percival. Angela, thank you so much for taking time. You're all the way from
Vancouver,
the western side of Canada, in Vancouver.
Holy cow.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Oh, it is our honor. And what I thought we would start off with, just describe a little bit about yourself and your photography, your interest in photography, etc. We're going to share some pictures here in a moment. So I'm going to
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. I originally am from Australia. I grew up actually on the beach and doing water sports. So I didn't grow up in the mountains, and so I moved to Canada when I was 18. And like a lot of Australians do, they kind of come across shore to go skiing. And then I stayed, and I fell in love with the mountains, and I fell in love with pretty much all the mountain sports, mountain biking and skiing and climbing, and that really led me into photography. I wouldn't say my grandfather didn't give me a camera or anything like that. I came to it quite late, and I really fell in love with photography more purely just for wanting to capture the beauty of the moments and the experiences that I was having in the mountains. And then I went on to work as a graphic designer for a company called Arc'teryx that's based here in Vancouver. And we were quite small back then, and I didn't want to sit at a desk all the time. So from graphic design, I asked if I could take photos, and then I created a video program, and I've been at Arc'teryx now for 16 years. And doing all the photography full-time pretty much for the last 7, anything outdoors. So I shoot all of our mountain sports, I shoot all of our athletes, so running, ice climbing, backpacking, skiing, hiking, and then all of the kind of landscape stuff as well. So that's it in a nutshell.
So if it's active, you're there, right?
Pretty much. If it's outdoors and it's fun and adventurous, I'm there.
And I understand that you don't have a formal training there. You're pretty much self-taught in photography like the two of us.
Yeah, I definitely self-taught and kind of on the job. And really, I would say it stemmed from just curiosity. I now think about it, I'm like, I wish I had gone to photography school. It would have been so fun just to learn that way. But I'm really thankful for being able to learn how I did as well. I've got so much still to learn, though. I feel like the more I know, the less I know.
Isn't that true, Fred? Well, I've been doing this for 55 years, and I'm still learning.
Long time, yeah.
Yep.
You never stop.
Yeah, there's always something new.
That's one of my favorite things, is that you can always be evolving in photography, and it's kind of like an evolution. I love it so much for that.
Now, did you start out in digital, or did you do film at all?
I did film, yeah. I shot film first, but it just got really complicated to turn over the images fast enough in a commercial sense. So I transitioned. I was lucky just at the time to transitioning to digital, because digital was becoming more popular and more affordable, actually.
Yep, well, we went through the same transitions. If it were the other way around, we want to go back to digital later.
Well, he went smoother. More kicking and screaming on my part, but.
Well, I was one that predicted. I figured that, say, around 1999, 2000, it'll be at least another decade before this digital thing takes off. Yeah, I was wrong.
It was hard to transition at the time, because the beauty of a slide is something that's I really enjoy working with slides, but when you put it into the actual day-to-day, it just didn't make sense to continue that way.
Yeah. It's a different workflow, that's for sure.
Yeah.
How about the pandemic? Has that had any effect? Which I'm sure it has. Everybody that is on lately, we have to bring that up.
Yeah, that's it. You know what? I feel really fortunate because I live here in Squamish, which is just north of Vancouver, and I live I could walk out my back door and be in the mountains. And working for so I work full time in in for Arc'teryx, so everything we want to shoot is kind of our backyard anyway. So we definitely had a pause moment where we kind of had to, I was in the middle of a shoot when we were told to come home, and then we just had to evolve really quickly. And we're very fortunate because a lot of our athletes live close here in Squamish and Vancouver, and so I was able to continue to shoot. At first, I just shot landscapes, just to be by myself out there and not cause pressure on the hospital system. And then once we were able to get out and do action stuff, we just did it all close by here. We didn't do any kind of overnighter things that kind of would bring too many people together. So it was actually, I feel very fortunate to live in the wilderness, to be able to continue to do my job and the work I love to do too.
That's certainly one of the advantages of being out in the outdoors, away from people, isn't it?
It really was, yeah. And that technically my client is just down the road.
Oh, well, that helps too.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we go over and share some of your photos with some of our viewers? I'm going to go ahead and bring them up, and I don't know if we have a particular order that you sent them here. But I'm going to go ahead and bring them up. I got these on my iPad. And do you just want me to describe them, and then you can tell what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, the first one is two people climbing up a very steep, snowy mountain. One in green, one in red. Yeah,
that is from Chamonix. So that is an alpine climbing photo. We have a group of athletes based in Chamonix in France, and every time I go there, I just get so scared. It's really big terrain and big country, and I end up on the most wild adventures with these. I actually feel like I owe so much of my photography to the people that are in it, because when we're in these kind of locations, we have to work as a team, and I'm usually, I would say, the weakest link of the team, because these are professional people that have done these sports for a long time, and they're at like the elite level, and so that I'm usually the third party in the team or the fourth party. And that one, I think we got up. We stayed at a hut the night before, and we got up, and in the summertime for alpine climbing, you're getting up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. to catch sunrise at 4 a.m. and usually you're trying to get, depending on your objective, but you're trying to get a distance. So you go to bed at 11 after a long day. You have very little sleep in alpine climbing, but I love shooting alpine climbing so much, because you begrudge getting up, as any photographer does, before, when your alarm goes off in the dark and you're like, oh no, why do I do this? And then as soon as you get out there,
now I know why.
you're just so thankful that you do. And those moments, I actually think, are some of the most special times, the most impactful experiences is the ones that you get up early for, and you get rewarded so quickly by the images you create.
I want everybody to keep in mind too, and you see this and you say, wow, that's fantastic. But keep in mind, Angela's up there with a camera, and she's also often up in front of the actual climbers. So keep that in mind as we go through this. And the next
I appreciate you saying that.
Well, I always think of that.
Point of view, you're shooting either beside them, slightly ahead, or down. This next one, you're shooting down at someone with a green.
Gentleman come over in the green, looking down at.
That's.
Yeah. I think it might be the same location.
Oh yeah. That one. So just before I get into that photo, I think being an outdoor adventure photographer, and so much of what I want to shoot is real people in real places, and being there is my goal is to really try and bring the experience to other people. And I do this a lot for my parents, because my parents live in a beach town, and I think they have no idea half the time where I go to and what I do, and I try and capture that experience. If I could bottle it up and put it into a picture. That specific photo is from Greenland. I did a shoot there a couple of years ago where I had to shoot an entire season of products. I had to shoot running, climbing, and hiking, and so I pitched an off-road road trip, and we could, an off-road road trip, like for the company that I work for, is kind of the end of a road, and then you go beyond that. And so I found a boat in Eastern Greenland, which isn't actually that easy to do in really short notice because a lot of them are booked well in advance. And we sailed from Iceland across to Eastern Greenland. We had an objective to summit this. That picture actually is on the top. We're just about to get to the summit of a new route that we did there. And we spent 3 days to get there, and we originally wanted to go like straight up the face, which is more my kind of, I prefer going straight up than off on these, there's quite a bit of exposure in that picture. And we took 2 days to cross the glacier and 1.5 days to climb it, but we put in a new route on Eastern Greenland, and we could look down. You can see, I think you can see in that picture, it might be another version of that shot, like icebergs, and it's so rugged. Like Eastern Greenland is next level rugged. It's so wild. It's one of the most wild places I've ever been.
I haven't yet been to I've been to Iceland many, many times, but it's on my list.
It's so worth going to. And I was going to say,
I actually had a chance a few years ago to conduct a workshop in Greenland. There's a Chinese photographers. They wanted to spend 3 weeks in Iceland and another 3 weeks in Greenland. This was in the winter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
So I did some searching, and they said, well, first off, you're going to have to stay in Quonset huts. There's no hotels, motels, nothing open. Number two, there's no transportation, so you're going to have to go everywhere by dog sled. So I got back to these Chinese photographers, and I never heard from them again. I thought that would have been a fantastic trip. But
yeah. There's not much infrastructure there at all. And that how we actually ended up there is a guide had told me in a hut randomly, funnily enough, in Chamonix. He'd just thrown out this comment. He said, Greenland technically isn't hard to get to. It's really hard to get around. Oh, yeah. And from that comment, I put it as a location in my head. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so that's kind of what led me to a place like that. So it's true. There's not much infrastructure at all.
And you went there from Iceland, isn't that correct?
We sailed from Iceland. So the only boat I could find had already gone back to Iceland for the season. And so he said, you can have the boat on one condition, that you sail it across with the captain. And I'm from Australia, so we grew up on boats. So I was like, sure, no problem.
Well, this next one, I don't know if it's easier to show you here.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, just so we know. Yeah, that's from Greenland too. So that fjord, that shot was actually kind of a tricky technical one, because I was shooting straight into the sun, and we needed to show the shoe. And we just had this, but I couldn't miss the opportunity of the background either, because the background was just sensational. And as we were shooting, the ice was coming, like carving off the glacier into the ocean, and then creating these like tidal wave type effects, which was amazing actually, to sleep on the boat, and then at night you just suddenly
rock.
do a little bit do a little bit of rock. But that was a running shot from one of our athletes, and we were just trying to explore around there, and there's no trail, so you just kind of pick your way up through the mountains to
make
get
your own
up.
trail. Huh?
Yeah. We could pretty much get out. You can get off the boat and get dropped off anywhere, and a little bit concerning with the polar bears, but it just makes it
I'd be a little concerned. Well, this next one, this looks like it either dawn or dusk.
Oh yeah, that's actually that's here in BC. So I love shooting here in British Columbia. It's just really hard to get access into the Alpine. My favorite thing is to shoot in the Alpine, like above tree line. Mostly because of the bears. I'm terrified of bears, so I can see everything around. And that one, we did a traverse from, we got dropped off by, I don't know if you want to know the technical side of the photo or more like the behind the scenes photo, but
both,
both, okay. So that shoot was a hike traverse. We were going from point to point, and my idea for that one was it was for a women's campaign for a hiking product, and my idea was to do a traverse, but where we got dropped I have a friend who's a float plane pilot, and I showed him on a map. I said, if you can you drop me off on this lake? Like, can you land on that lake? Because I want to do this mountain traverse. Like, I connected it on Google Maps and then pick us up in this other lake. And he was like, oh, they look a little bit tight, but let me fly over and have a look. And then we basically left downtown Vancouver. So we left, the hub of the city on the float plane. And then we got dropped off into the wilderness for 8 days. And then he took off, and we were like, okay, see you. And then we went up mountains, and that was actually pulling into a campsite. Like, we slept up high in the Alpine every night. So we had these incredible views. Wow. But British Columbia here, like, there's mountains for 1,200 kilometers north of me. So there's no shortage of adventures. Lifetime of photos.
Well, this next one looks like it's taking a little break here.
Oh, yeah, that one's... That's from a shoot I did in Nepal, where have you both been to the Himalaya?
I've been to Tibet, in the Himalayas, around Tibet.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Tibet. It's on the list.
Oh, yes, you must.
That one was, so we did, I went to shoot mountains, actually, and for me, the kind of photo journey is really... Like, I love going for the experience, but it's as you would probably both understand, being photographers, I don't think I could ever do it and not take my camera. No. And for me, I also like having a bit of a purpose. So I ended up pitching my boss at the time, who's the creative director, and I said, if I really want to go and shoot mountains in Nepal, and just for like landscape kind of purposes, he's like, okay, but you have to take some product with you. He said, but you can't take any of the athletes, because I was going to be gone for 4 weeks. So for affordability, so I ended up convincing my sister, that's actually my sister in that photo, to come be my model. She just got out of university, so she was very cheap. I didn't have to pay her anything. And we hiked, and she sat very patiently while I waited for the clouds to come and go on mountains. As you both know, you got to have a patient partner. Yep. And I think for me, actually, in those photos too, like, I've got the hiking action and I got the mountains, but it's those in between kind of quiet moments that really bring the story. If there's, an editorial piece or together. In this situation, there wasn't, but afterwards, because I shot those in between moments, we were able to kind of put a story together. And I think that with those kind of photos of that era too, where I was really learning depth of field and just how to play with that to tell better stories. Like, that's something that I kind of set myself little objectives to learn, and that one was really just to become a better storyteller, which I still feel like I'll be doing for the rest of my career as a photographer.
Yeah, and telling a story with a photo is very, very important.
Yeah.
And speaking of stories, here we go.
So that one, we
watch your step.
There's some parts of mountaineering that I really like being attached to the mountain. I don't like the full exposure part, and that was the part in the climb where you actually had to sit on top of the mountain, and then you had to kind of shuffle, if you're really bold, you just walk on the top. Mm-hmm. It's like an Oshaval. And that's in the Bugaboos, which the Bugaboos are mountains like in the Selkirks, like a group of mountains in the Selkirk range here in British Columbia. And they're very well known for their pillars, which in the back you'll see the pillar. And we're standing on one of the pillar climbs called the Pigeon Spire. And I was doing a story about mountain guides, actually, and the purpose of, or why you would hire a mountain guide.
Is this early in the morning, or is this late in the evening?
That is coming off the mountain at night. So we've been climbing. That one I'll actually remember, we got up at 12 a.m. to start that climb. Wow. So we kind of didn't really, and go to bed very much. And then just because we had quite a long approach to get into that. And, mountain guides are actually another big piece of the puzzle for me. I'm so grateful for them for safety.
And this one, I can kind of relate to this. I did one in Yellowstone a number of years ago, and I had the ice like that. This was in the winter, And I look like a walrus out of my mustache with the ice hanging down.
That must have been so cold on your lip.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've had it on my beard and my mustache. And it just, you almost don't notice it until somebody says something, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's all over there.
I do look with the frosted eyelashes.
There you go.
Yeah. And I actually love those kind of. I get cold just thinking about that shot.
I imagine
that it's. The ice and moisture does something like incredible, and I love the Yellowstone where the bison, with the steam coming out and just freezing.
The breath, yes.
Yeah, it creates so much atmosphere. Like I think that if she didn't have that on her eyes, it would be such a different photo, because you can't tell in a photo always how cold it is, and a lot of the time, you don't want to make it look super cold, but in this situation, like it was minus 40, but we were camping on a ridge top, and we got kind of caught up in this crazy windstorm, so it was so cold, and everything froze. And that's my most cold experience, I would say. Like shockingly things froze, like that I would never have anticipated. And when you're camping, it's very obvious, like toothpaste froze, your apples froze, your deodorant froze, the Baileys even had like slushy in it.
Campfire froze, and
no, we were above tree line, so we had nothing.
Wow!
Even
that's colder than
water.
The coldest I had in Yellowstone was minus 30, so 40 below. That's cold.
That is, it is. Oh, sorry, Celsius. That's Celsius too.
Oh, Celsius. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I think we're stupid Americans with our Fahrenheit.
No, I think once you go minus 32, then we kind of start to even out. I think they start to be the same as Fahrenheit.
Yes,
but I could be wrong on that.
Gets close. This also looks pretty cold. Yeah.
That's actually the same trip. And that's the wind. Like, it's one of the things I love to try and do is try and capture elements, but they're so hard. And wind particularly is something, we make a lot of windproof jackets, and so I try and capture wind, but it's so hard to capture something you can really see.
Yes.
And except when it was blowing it was like blowing across a desert. It was so windy. We couldn't even, and that just made it even more cold. But that's what I love about those elements is the atmosphere. Like, it really brings out the atmosphere of the mountains if you can capture it.
Yeah, I think Fred will agree. That definitely...
That's cold.
It's cold. Yeah. You captured that one well. And this was skiing down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's... I feel like I'm going to say they're all in the mountains. That was actually... Technically, that one was a good one too, because I knew I wanted to shoot across. I don't have access to these massive long lenses that, just because of where I am, and it's hard to get it's even hard to rent those here for me, and where I go, and I'm usually gone for weeks. But that one, I had to shoot that from across a valley. So we both got dropped. We actually got dropped off by the helicopter. We use helicopters a little bit for access, just because it might take like 4 days to get somewhere that you can get dropped off, and then you're kind of on your way. And I didn't think I was going to be able to capture him. It's hard to shoot sharp I was using a doubler, and to shoot a doubler across a valley, and it ended up working out really well. But I have to say, as an outdoor photographer, and these people, become my good friends, when you're watching that person head towards a cliff line, and you can't, you like all that if you're looking at the photo, all that to the right side is, if he fell off that cliff, he'd be gone. And I have to say, like, sometimes my heart, looking through the lens and seeing them ski, I trust them innately because they're amazing athletes, but you just get a bit nervous, and you're like,
one on the right doesn't look too friendly either.
Well, that brings me to a good question here. What is your go-to lens then when you're out doing these traverses and these different trips?
My favorite lens is the 70-200 2.8. I've just switched to Sony in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I've been Canon forever. And the Sony 70-200 is especially for action sports, because it's fast, and usually the distance, I can't usually stand that close to people.
Is that the Sony full frame or the
Yeah, it's the A7R4.
Yeah.
That I've been using, which isn't the best camera for action, but for skiing sometimes I'll flip to the back to the Canon 1DX. I haven't got the A9 yet because I wasn't ready to fully commit
Right.
to Sony. So
I know still. I want to go with a mirrorless, but I haven't quite decided.
It's hard. It's hard to make that switch.
Hard to give up my 5D and the 7D.
So then you carry that lens, and then in the case of this one, you put on a 2x lens doubler.
2x extender.
Yeah.
Right?
Extender, right?
Yeah.
And
then,
and it's sharp. It was.
So
it's surprisingly sharp. Like that was the biggest test. We ended up turning that actually into a billboard that went in the Zurich train station.
Wow.
Like not a billboard, but something like before you kind of walk down. And I was a bit nervous, but I had no other choice to shoot it than with that.
Right.
And to your question, like I end up carrying the doubler quite a bit these days because weight for me is a big consideration because I'm carrying everything by myself, and usually I'm having to do all these sports and I don't want to slow down the team, and so I try and carry 24 to 70, like a mid-range, and then depending on what we're going to shoot, if it's climbing, I'll take the third lens would be like a wide angle. Especially if I'm hanging from the rock because they're all within like close proximity, or if it's like more of a portrait kind of shoot, I'll take a fixed lens. Like I'm really enjoying the 35 mil or the 50 mil. Like the Sony optics are incredible. Like they really are incredible. Yep. Or wide. So I'm kind of like on a 3 lenses as my basic kit, I would say.
Well,
like I can carry.
Fans of Sony, in fact, over a decade ago, that's when Sony purchased Minolta. We said, hey, we had no doubt that Sony will become a major player in the photography market. And they certainly have.
And they have.
Well, we've got this final photo.
Oh, yeah, that's my sister.
Oh, yeah.
Again, we were running. That was from Nepal shoot. We'd shot early morning sunrise, so we'd got up and we'd actually climbed up Gokyo Ri that morning to shoot sunrise, and I got from that, my favorite shot of my career is Mount Thames Circuit was from that morning, and we had decided to go running, but once we started running and I was running with the camera, we realized at that altitude it wasn't that fun to be running.
Do you know what the altitude? Do you remember what it was there?
Well, I think Gokyo Ri is at, I want to say it's like 5,100 meters maybe. Well, it could be. It was a couple of years ago now, but
feet. Yeah, you're up there. You're way up there.
Yeah, it's not kind of the area you go running for a long time in.
No.
Like after a morning walk to the top. Yeah, that shoot really was one of my favorite. Like the Himalayas, it's where my camera finds its happy place because everywhere you turn, there's incredible mountains to shoot.
Yeah, I actually had early this year a chance to go to Kathmandu. I had a local doctor invited me, wanted to go with him, and something came up, I wasn't able to go, and he said that they actually hiked to the base camp.
Oh, yeah.
And he said it was the toughest hike that he's ever been on. And he wasn't carrying any of his equipment. They had, Sherpas that carried all their stuff. And he said, I was still totally out of breath.
Breathless, yeah.
So being Fred and I are here at sea level, I think we would have had a tough time with that.
It catches anyone unaware.
Yes.
Like it's so random.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your pictures. Before we go, do you have any, we always ask our guests if they have advice that they would give other photographers that may be listening and maybe new at photography?
Yeah, I would say I feel like I'm still learning so much, so I don't feel quite qualified yet to give advice, but I would say that one thing I wish I had have done more, I was very scared to show people my pictures. It worked out well that I worked inside behind a company. And I would say I wish I had have shot and shared and got feedback earlier on. I was too scared, so I have a lot of images in my hard drive that I don't share, but because I always compared myself. There was no women at the time doing it, but to the boys at the top. And so I just never shared enough. I think it's easier these days with social media to put stuff out and get feedback really quickly. But I would say for anyone learning, that's the fastest way to learn and to become better and to iterate and to try new things and to experiment. So,
are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram, yeah,
Okay.
at Ange Percival, ANGEPERCIVAL.
Good. Well, we're going to put that down here along with your website. Encourage people to go over there and follow you on Instagram. Check out your website. And for your latest adventures.
For my latest adventures. Lots to come.
Yes. And we sure appreciate your time for coming on.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Fred, do you have any final wrap-up questions?
I asked my question earlier.
Oh, okay. He's only
that
allowed one question, so
Yeah.
I didn't realize he only...
That was the big question. I got to ask the lens question.
Oh, the lens question. That's right.
You used up your question.
Can I phone a friend?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I can use one of my lifelines.
There you go.
What are your lifelines? I love questions.
The other question we usually ask is, would you be willing to come back on again someday?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what we want to hear.
Which
Good.
is great, because anytime somebody comes back, I get to ask 2 questions.
Yes. And when you come back, then you're a 2-timer.
Yes.
So
Perfect.
I get to ask as many questions as that person has been on. So,
Okay. I look forward to it then. I can't wait.
so do we. So thank you so
Yes.
much. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice chatting about photography.
Keep
Always
shooting.
fun.